Hogwarts, rising as Harry's twin with power. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 1. In 1991, London, in an orphanage, Darren was sitting alone in a corner of the garden. How did he get through? And also a foreigner. Fortunately, he gained the memory of the original owner over the way, and he was not found wrong, because he could not speak a foreign language. But he was really a little confused. Wasn't it voluntary to cross this kind of thing? Darren sighed. Looking back, I saw Kenley walking with a few children in the distance. He covered his head with a headache. Kenley is the child king of this orphanage. All children must listen to him, or they will be beaten. The original owner was pushed down the stairs by Kenley for violating Kenley's regulations, and his head landed on the ground, and he died on the spot. Then he woke up with Darren from the 21st century. In the past few days, Kenley has not caused much trouble to Darren, and has to force Darren to submit to him. Darren was naturally unwilling, and with the thinking of an adult, secretly gave him several tripwires, making him suffer a lot of losses. I thought it would make him peaceful, who knew that this guy didn't have enough brains, and thought it was really his own problem. Didn't think about Darren's revenge at all, or looked for Darren to trouble every day. If Darren hadn't just crossed over and planned to spend some time in the orphanage, Kenley would have let Kenley enjoy the treatment of the original owner a long time ago. Darren, I heard Yali say that you were hiding here, and sure enough, your snacks today have not been handed to me. Do you still want to be pushed down by me? Kenley was a year older than Darren, 12 years old this year, with a big waist and round waist, like a strong young man, and Darren had always suspected that he had grown up eating pig feed. Hearing Kenley ask him for a snack, Darren wanted to laugh at the fool on the spot. Does this guy think that he will be like the original owner, leaving snacks waiting for him to grab? Laugh to death, he will eat clean in 2 bites. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a mechanical voice in his ear and remembered. Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting the Holy Father system. Ding. As long as the host makes the Father's move, it can get the Father's value, and the Father's value can be used in the mall. Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting the starter pack. Is it open? Holy Father system? Is there such a system in the world? Darren opened his mouth and his eyes widened wordlessly, but in a blink of an eye, he was a little disgusted not to go over his head. No, he didn't want to be a Holy Father. Even if the reward is given, the other persona is lost. Forget it, you go. Ding. Sensing the host idea, the system thinks it is necessary to explain the Father system. Ding. The Father system, as the name suggests, is to be the Father, but this system only requires doing what people see as the Father. Ding. That is, even if the host kills people and sets fire behind his back, as long as he is not discovered, then the host will not break the rules. Ding. The system is explained. If the host insists on letting the system leave, the system will start a self-destruct procedure. This. Cough. You better stay. Whatever personality is impersonal, Darren just wants to test what it's like to be a Holy Father. Well, it feels very good. Although he had not yet begun to be a Holy Father. Ding. Since the host decides to bind the system, does the host open the new B pack? Open. Darren rubbed his hands excitedly. I heard that the beginner's gift bag is a god-level ability. I don't know what he can mix. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Holy Father's aura. Improve their appearance, temperament, and charm. Congratulations to the host for acquiring the skill of treating death as a homecoming. Each injury can shield itself from pain, and when it is injured, the size of the damage applied to it can be adjusted. Congratulations to the host for getting the heart of the Shadow Emperor. You can control your expression, emotions, and physical condition at will. Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting mana plus 100. Well, the first 3 rewards Darren all understand, not just beauty, pain shield, and god-level acting. But what does the last one mean? Magic? Is there magic in this world? As soon as Darren thought about it, 4 rewards were already distributed to him. He looked at a flower in the flower bed with great joy, thinking about chocolate, and then the flower in his eyes gradually turned into a piece of chocolate and fell on the ground. Is this really magic? Could this be the Harry Potter world? Forgive Darren's lack of imagination. He could only think for a moment and a half that Harry Potter had magic in this novel. It's amazing. Ding. Sensing that the host has room for the Father to play, begins to issue a temporary task. Give the snack to Kenley, and say the words, give you chocolate, you don't bully others. Ding. After the task is completed, get the god-level brain closure technique. When someone is viewing, you can disguise the virtual memory. Does the host receive the task? Pick up. Case solved. Absolutely Harry Potter. Occlusion is definitely a great skill in Harry Potter, especially for a crosser like him, especially the divine grade brain occlusion technique. Darren quickly chose to pick it up. Only then did he look up at Kenley. The guy didn't see him turn the flowers into chocolate at all, and was smug that Darren was afraid of him for not talking. Darren secretly rolled his eyes, but he took it back immediately, raised his head with a smile of expectation, and hesitantly raised his hand, and in the palm of his hand was an unpackaged chocolate. I don't know how long he held the chocolate, but it still tasted delicious. Darren seemed to pluck up the courage and gritted his teeth and said, now, give you chocolate, you don't bully others, okay? If you want, I'll give you all the chocolates later. That's right. Next time you take a stone to turn it into a piece, cool you. Darren smiled sinisterly, but he now had the heart of the Shadow Emperor, and his appearance looked pure and good. Gene Snape, who had just arrived, clenched his fists and stood in place, with red eyes. Episode 2. Kenley didn't pay any attention to Darren's words, he just saw the piece of chocolate in Darren's hand. With his eyes shining, he snatched it up and stuffed it into his mouth, wanting to taste the rare delicacy. It was only when this plug was in the mouth that he realized that it was not right. How does this chocolate have a floral smell and a little earthy smell? Could it be that Darren fell to the ground? Yuck. Darren, you dare to give me what fell on the ground to eat. See if I don't kill you today. The Kenley man rushed at Darren. If he had hit him hard, Darren thought he might fly. Hey, this guy is stupid. Isn't he going to think he's going to stay where he is? Won't he hide? Darren immediately pulled his leg to hide, who knew that he turned his head and saw a man behind him, standing behind him with a pained look, like a dumb melon. If he had hid, it would have been this man who had been hit. Sigh, you say that this man is not standing where he is not good, not standing behind him. In a moment, he will definitely be bumped by Kenley. Unfortunately, dead Taoist friends do not die poor Tao. Friends, enlighten yourselves. Ding, sensing that there is room for the Holy Father to play around the host, now publishes a temporary task. Close your eyes, put your hands on your face, and shout with a frightened expression, "Sir, you get out of the way, be careful of falling." Ding, after the task is completed, you can get the semi-finished product silently. Does the host receive the task? Pick up. Another task that Darren could not refuse. Silence is a powerful and extremely unstable, uncontrollable black magic. Will detach from the host and then attack others. Those who are silently parasitized are called silent people. Silent people usually do not live to be 10 years old, but it's clear that the system certainly doesn't have any side effects on him. Just half-finished products silently? Is there still a finished product? But it doesn't matter. In the Harry Potter world, there are all kinds of dangers, and with this life-saving skill, his survival factor is greatly increased, okay? Take a deep breath. Darren followed the system's prompts, stood where he was, closed his eyes, put his hands in front of his face, and shouted in a frightened and even shrunken tone, "Sir, get out of the way, be careful of being hit by Kennedy." Ding, temporary task completed. Congratulations to the host for getting the reward, the semi-finished product silently. Ding, the half-finished product can be silently manipulated using the father value, and 1,000 father values can make the silent appearance for 1 minute. Ding, the full version silently does not require the control of the Holy Father, and can be obtained in later missions. 1,000 fathers are worth it. Darren was stunned, he didn't have one yet, but the good guys won't take his life. And when you have the father value later, you can use it. I think a minute should be enough to kill someone silently, right? Darren thought to himself. Outwardly strong and fearful stood in front of Snape. Snape seemed to see the red-haired girl in a trance. She is strong, brave, fearless, enthusiastic. She has the best qualities. He was also the one he loved most. No. No, I won't allow you to hurt her again. Snape gritted his teeth and roared, and a ray of light shot out from the top of his wand, and Kenley flew high and then smashed to the ground. Darren opened his eyes in a daze and saw Kenley lying silently on the ground, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. Anyway, the blood under his head was gradually flowing out. Shit. Darren heard the man behind him whisper a scolding, and then he seemed to see a black bat passing by his side and rushing to Kenley's side. Then he saw the man wave his small stick in his hand, and a deer appeared in front of his eyes. Silver, ethereal. It makes people feel that their minds are quiet. Darren subconsciously thought of the patron saint. He was stunned, and then he heard the man speak extremely quickly, "Dumbledore." Darren. Muggles injured. Saint Mungo. He didn't hear the rest clearly, but he probably knew who the man in front of him was. Isn't this one of the most tragic characters in Harry Potter, Professor Snape? A double agent in the wizarding world. Because Harry Potter stepped into the classroom with his left foot, the Gryffindor deducted 10,000 points. Sigh, he didn't expect that on the first day of contact with the wizard, he could see the plot characters. The main thing is that he seems to have just protected Snape. Cough, though in the end Snape didn't know why he was going to open up and knock Kenley out of the way. It seemed as if he had just heard Snape shouting something not to hurt her again, for in him, she was able to hear. It was indeed her. Is it hard for Snape to treat him like Lily? That's not right. Is he a man? Could it be that what he had just done made Snape think of Lily? Darren smashed his mouth twice. I wanted to say that Snape's licking dog could think of Lily when he saw any good quality, but after thinking about it, he didn't dare to say it. Afraid that Snape, who was obviously angry at this moment, would give him an awada to nibble on a big melon. Ding, finding that there is room for the Holy Father system nearby, released a temporary task, walked over to Kenley and asked in a worried and anxious tone, "Sir, Kenley will be all right, right?" Ding, after the completion of the mission to get 100 father points, do you receive a temporary task? Pick up. Although no other rewards are issued this time, it is also possible to have father value. And that's what a word, do it. Darren blinked his eyes twice, and the heart of the Shadow Emperor was launched, and his eyes immediately turned red, as if he had just reacted, and he hurriedly took steps to Kenley's side. He called out to Kenley softly twice, and found Kenley lying motionless there. He could only eagerly raise his head and ask worriedly, "Sir, Kenley will be all right, right?" Ding. Congratulations to the host for getting 100 father points. The red-haired boy looked at himself with a pale face. There was no schadenfreude in the eyes, only heavy worry. Obviously, this boy named Kenley just threatened him and almost knocked him away, but he was so kind. He and Lily really seem to be. He's okay. Episode 3. Snape whispered a response. Darren seemed to be relieved, and Chunleong nodded, which really looked at Kenley. Sigh, it was indeed retribution. The original Lord was made like this by him, and then the feng shui took turns, and he has become like this now. If Kenley is the protagonist of the novel, he should be able to cross it by now. Darren shook his head in gloom, stepping away from Kenley's side, taking advantage of the fact that Snape did not know what to think. He stomped on Kenley's face so hard that he almost threw him down, frightening Darren's small face to white. Snape was startled by his movements, and looked back to see Darren stepping over Kenley's face. Then I saw the boy's pale face. Knowing that the boy had just done some harm to Kenley, Snape still had no intention of blaming him. The boy didn't mean it, he was just too scared. He had a good temper and was frightened by such a scene. You must know that in a few moments, this man named Kenley will be sent to St. Mungo. Just a little hit on the head, which should not be as harmful to him as the Ministry of Magic has forgotten everything. If your brain is not a troll, you should know at this moment that you need to rest for a while and not waste time here with a baboon. Snape glanced at Darren and seemed to be calm, speaking in a flamboyant tone, implicitly ironically. Darren secretly skimmed his lips, and sure enough, it was a knife mouth, although the meaning of the words was to let Darren rest, but it was to make people roll their eyes. Darren squeezed out a smile and hid the word old bat that was about to blurt out. The boy's smile was extremely reluctant, as if he had been hurt by what he said, and a pair of watery green eyes seemed to lose their luster. Too much like Lily. If Lily were still alive and would be very happy to see this child found, right? Lily, your child is like you, so I can't even bear to blame him for believing in people casually and protecting others, despite the danger. Snape's thin lips tightened, as if remembering something, and he took a letter from his pocket and stuffed it into Darren. Say in as calm a tone as possible, take it and see. Dumbledore wrote the letter, using your that. You're a freshman at Hogwarts. Hogwarts is a school of witchcraft and wizardry. Your mother is Lily Potter, and you have an older brother named Harry Potter. Snape said something behind Darren hadn't noticed, and he was now completely confused. What the is Lily Potter? His brother Harry Potter? Wouldn't he still have a dad named James Potter? Darren was shocked to hear Snape spit out the name James Potter in a tone that tasted stinky. Oh, how could he be Harry Potter's younger brother? Harry Potter didn't have a brother in the original book. Darren suddenly remembered the letter that Snape had just stuffed into him, as if to say that Dumbledore had also written it. He had to take a closer look, lest Snape find out that he was pretending to be a good guy and deliberately spoofing him. Or is this Snape a disguise made by Fred and George, who drank a combination of decoctions? Darren eagerly tore open the letter and saw the font of the snare at a glance. That's right, it should be Dumbledore's word. It was described in the original book. It was only after he had carefully read the letter that he finally knew what was going on with his identity. When Lily was pregnant, she was captured by the Death Eaters, and in order to torture Lily, they fed Lily many experimental drugs. Torturing Lily to death, Snape uses many methods to save Lily, including spells and potions. In the end, it is not known which spell worked. Lily survived, but the child in the belly turned into twins. At that time, no one was sure if this had any bad effects, and wanted Lily to kill the two children, but Lily was reluctant and gave birth to him and Harry. Harry came out a minute before him and became an older brother. He was one step late and became the second eldest. Even more tragically, he was captured by Death Eaters who were ambushed in St. Mungo's at birth. Sirius slowed them down and Darren was snatched away. They knew that the Death Eaters had taken Darren in order to use Darren as an allegiance to their master, Voldemort. So they lied to the outside world that the Death Eaters had not taken their children at all, and that they had only given birth to one child, Harry. The Death Eaters thought they had been deceived, so they threw Darren away. It's just that they also left a hard eye, although they threw Darren, but they didn't let Darren go, but threw him into the center of the battlefield where the two sides were fighting. By the time Sirius and Jamie sneak around, Darren has disappeared. Coupled with the fact that Jamie and Lily were later killed by Voldemort, Sirius entered Azkaban, and the possibility of Darren's survival was even more uncertain. Snape and Dumbledore had been keeping an eye on Darren all these years, but for so long, they really thought Darren was dead, so they never explained that Harry Potter had a brother. It wasn't until half an hour earlier, when Darlin Porter's name appeared on the Hogwarts Access Manual, that Dumbledore had written a letter urgently for the impatient Snape to deliver. Half an hour ago? That's when he just got the system newbie pack. Perhaps there is such a child in the world of the original work, but unfortunately, the original owner is a squib. He was pushed down by Kenley and may have really died. The letter was accompanied by a Hogwarts acceptance letter. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Confederation of Wizards, Sir Merlin I, Grand Magician, Chief Magician of Wizengamot. Dear Mr. Porter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please enclose with a list of required secretaries and equipment. The semester is scheduled to begin on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to bring you a reply by July 31st. Vice Principal, Female, Minerva McGonagall respects. Episode 4, The Letter. Darren was finished. Whether or not to go to Hogwarts became a big problem. He had thought he was just an ordinary student, at best, a systematic crosser, so he was quite excited to go to Hogwarts. But as soon as he got his identity, he panicked. He turns out to be the protagonist's brother. The kind of brother who was born with many disasters and hardships. According to the plot of the novel, his brother should be killed in front of the protagonist, and then let the protagonist fight to paint the wall. Especially this kind of plot, He is afraid that he will have to die in a certain part to fully describe his identity, or not to go. Ding, sensing the host idea, the system thinks it is necessary to make the host aware of the power of the system. Ding, at this stage, the system can block Merlin's full force blow, and then take the host away from the plane to escape, and later as the host's father value increases, it can be more powerful. Ding, for the system, Hogwarts is just the starting point. This? Darren gave the system a thumbs up. Awesome, I'm going to Hogwarts. It doesn't matter if the plot is not plot. I want to save the world and shine the light of the Holy Father at Hogwarts. Oh, dear little Darren, you should have read the letter. Maybe we should come to your room and sit down. You may need a glass of chilled lemonade to calm down. Just as Darren made his inner declaration, an old voice rang in his ear. He looked up and saw an old man in a purple robe standing in front of him. He was tall and thin, with silvery white hair and a long beard. With a pair of half-moon glasses, the blue eyes under the glasses are shining. His nose was long and curved, as if he had been flattened at least twice. This must be Dumbledore, right? Dumbledore, I am Dumbledore. You may call me Professor Dumbledore. I am the headmaster of Hogwarts, as you may already know, Dumbledore said with a smile. Gentle eyes looked into Darren's eyes. Ding, the host is being taken by the gods. Is it a disguised memory? Depend on. Darren almost scolded out loud. This old man took his mind as soon as he met, and he was really not a good man. He also thought that this old man had to go to the room with him to make trouble. Who knew that if it suddenly came, he would make a big move. Although he himself felt that there was something wrong with him. After all, Harry's name appeared on the Book of Access from birth. His name only appeared half an hour ago. Dumbledore suspected that he was normal, but Darren was speechless, and the old man was so suspicious that he didn't even give him time to prepare. If he didn't have a system, I'm afraid he wouldn't have even revealed the secrets of the Crossers. Viciousness? Since old Dang wants to see it, then he will show old Dang a big one. System, according to the memories I thought, show all of them to old Dang. The 11-year-old boy stopped Kenley from bullying the girl and came forward to stop it, and Kenley pushed down the stairs fiercely, and he struggled to protect his head with a broken and bleeding head. The 10-year-old boy envied other people's parents in the corner, but in the blink of an eye, he got up and gave some of his few foods to the stray cats. The 8-year-old boy was beaten to tears by his aunt in the courtyard because he pointed out that someone was stealing something on the street, and the thief was disturbed and did not steal anything, but instead beat a rake. The 6-year-old boy had someone come to adopt him, and the couple who adopted him was richly dressed and well educated, and they liked the boy, and the boy really wanted to be taken away by them. But he looked at the face of the expected partner with him, and painfully recommended the little partner to the couple. They agreed that they would always come and go back and forth in the future, but the little friend never came back, and the boy was a little worried and missed him. The 4-year-old boy picked up some vegetable leaves from the kitchen and devoured them. Because he brought a child who had been abused to the orphanage, causing the child's parents to call the police, he was punished by the teacher for not eating for 2 days. But 2 days later, the teacher still did not bring him food. The 2-year-old boy lay on the grass and fed the shoddy milk he drank to the hungry crying baby. Dumbledore had all these images under his eyes. He withdrew his wand heavily. He didn't want to look at so many memories at first. He just habitually wondered what had happened before and why it made Snape so angry. But I don't know why. He had just used the receptive mind, and the child's memory was like an indoctrination pouring into his brain. He was reluctant to resist that feeling. He subconsciously accepted these memories. Admittedly, past experiences have brought him too many bad habits. He did want to know what Darren had been through. Just after receiving these memories, he did not feel at all relaxed. Obviously, he should be glad that Darren was not at all the same as the man in his memory, and he was not a dark wizard disguise. Darren is kind-hearted, brave, tenacious, and full of love. He had qualities that even Dumbledore envied, but this child is too kind, so kind that it hurts him. They should have found the child sooner, and he should have grown up in a pampered environment. Dumbledore sighed, his always wise blue eyes lingering in the mist. He took off his glasses, wiped his tears, and said in an emotional tone, "Forgive me, child, please forgive me for the serious mistake made by this damn old man. I may have made you think of unhappy things. I'm very sorry, child." Darren secretly skimmed his lips. Having read the original work, he already knew that old Dang was suspicious, and even he often used the savior to take his mind. To apologize continuously is to die without repentance. Episode 5. Darren silently complained about Dumbledore. I almost hung a picture of Dumbledore on the tombstone. However, on the surface, he is still a simple boy who is pure white and ignorant. After all, he was now a poor little man who had no contact with magic at all, and naturally did not know what Dumbledore would say again. So he tilted his head and asked with an innocent look, "Why apologize? Is it because I wasn't found in advance?" "It doesn't matter, I'm very happy. I like it very much, even Kenley here, it's very likable." "Yeah, from that guy you should be able to brush the father's value. Maybe you can bully that guy while pretending to be the Holy Father. It may not be long before he becomes the first person in the wizarding world." Darren thought of the miserable look of Kenley just now, and almost laughed sadly. Ding, found that the host used the father's light on its own for the first time, rewarding the Phoenix pet beast with an egg of +100. Hey, Phoenix pet beast egg? Oh Phoenix, Dumbledore had a phoenix, and it was rumored that Dumbledore had a phoenix bloodline in his family, so he could attract a phoenix, but he didn't expect to have one. Darren smiled excitedly. I had the heart to take out the reward now. but looking at Dumbledore, I could only roll my eyes and continue to pretend. Dumbledore certainly didn't see Darren's expression. He just saw the kindness and generosity that Darren was now. Obviously it was a tough time here. Everyone could bully him, even if he was doing a good thing. Those people let him try the taste of fists and hunger. But he is as pure as his mind, as pure as ever. When he said the phrase even Kenley is very likable, he always told others that love is the great Dumbledore. And at this time he wanted to give Darren a look at the evil in this world, but he finally resisted the thought. Otherwise, the greatest white wizard in the world may have to revise his beliefs. So he smiled and said, "Dear child, I don't need to say, obviously you have understood that love is the greatest existence in this world. And as long as you believe in it, the world will be very beautiful." Darren showed an expression that seemed to understand. But nod your head and you're done. Dumbledore didn't think he would understand it now, either. He laughed, put his arm around Darren's shoulder, and smiled. "Let's go. Dear little Darren, maybe we should come to your dean's office and talk to her about you." The dean's wife, named Linda, was the fiercest teacher in the entire orphanage. The memories that Darren made up did not slander her. She had indeed starved the original owner many times, for 2 or 3 days each time. It is also because the original owner has beaten the original lord with some small things, and punished the original lord for kneeling before the lord and repenting of his mistakes. After Darren got the memory of the original owner, he had to lament the fierceness of this Lady Linda. Of course, what impressed him even more was the lady's ability to absorb gold. The lady often took the children from the orphanage to some charity venues. Let these children please those kind and simple ladies and get a large amount of donations. These donations did not all of Mrs. Linda go into the orphanage. Instead, 1,000th of it was used to add some libraries to the orphanage that were not allowed to be entered by orphans, to promote Mrs. Linda's educational philosophy. The rest of the funds will be given by Mrs. Linda to her son, who is studying in France, hoping that he can live in the upper class when he returns from school. She often instilled in her children the idea that they should not eat too much, because they had no money. The original owner was malnourished every day, and at 11 years old, he might be thinner than Harry. At least Petunia also gave Harry Potter 3 meals a day, and would not be hungry for 2 or 3 days at a time. If Darren hadn't crossed over, curry favor with a few new teachers with the sweet words of adults, and get an extra piece or 2 of bread a day to snack, he might have had to fight with Kenley on a hungry stomach. Dumbledore followed Darren to Lady Linda's house. The lady had soft blonde hair and wore a long, upscale dress and was applying nail polish to her office. Hearing someone knocking on the door, he quickly put away the nail polish and made a reading gesture. Dumbledore came in for a while, and she pretended to find Dumbledore, and stood up exaggerated and pretentious. "Oh my God, I was so addicted to reading the book that I didn't see you. I don't know which gentleman you are. What's the point of being here, Dumbledore?" Dumbledore said solemnly. He took Darren's hand, pulled him to his side, and said coldly, "Darren is my friend's child. I finally found him today. I need to take him away." "Ah. Take Darren with you? Oh my God, is what you say true? Our little Darren is smart and sensible. He is simply a part of our orphanage. If you want to take him away, you have to have a say, right? In a word, if you want to take Darren away, you have to add money." Every time Mrs. Linda had orphans to be adopted, she would take some money out of those adopters. It is said that it was by this lack of cherishing, or after paying the money, that she was relieved to send these little treasures in her orphanage out. Dumbledore frowned, his face more serious, but instead of having a seizure, he looked back at Darren and squeezed out an unpleasant smile and said, "Child, you pack your things first. I may need to talk about something." It was obvious that old Dang should have been prepared to teach this Lady Linda a little lesson. Playing tricks on the White Wizard, Lady Linda had obviously not yet been beaten by the wizard. No, maybe it was suffered and forgotten again? Darren blinked and wanted to go straight out, waiting for the lady to be beaten. But thinking of his own Holy Father's light, he hurriedly said, "Professor Dumbledore, you don't have to pay for me. I can't let you pay for me." Ding, Father plus 50. Episode 6. The father value that he played freely was obviously not as much as when the system released the task, but Darren still laughed very contentedly. His smile is not hazy, and people feel comfortable looking at it. Dumbledore was unsurprisingly infected by his smile. "Oh, dear child, don't you think I'll use my own money? Your parents have many golden garrons." "Well, I probably haven't told you what Jinglin is, but you can ask Snape, your future potions professor. He's here." Dumbledore pointed outside the window. Darren looked back, and sure enough, a gloomy black bat-like man was pressing his face against the window, his nose as if it had been squashed. I didn't expect Snape to do the same. Darren almost opened his mouth and burst out laughing. However, immediately thinking of his own Holy Father's light, he quickly stopped his own ungraceful behavior. As if embarrassed, he grabbed his hair and lowered his head to suppress the smile at the corner of his mouth, before he stepped out of his legs and walked out eagerly. "Professor Snape, is Kenrith better?" Ding, Father plus 50. Darren accepted the father's value and looked at Snape, his face full of concern. He remembered it when he heard Dumbledore say that Lily and Jamie had left Kim Garen. Kenley was injured, and Mrs. Linda was likely to ask him to pay for the damages. What if Dumbledore thought he was kind and really took his money to compensate Kenley? Although the Kenley guy had just been badly beaten by Snape, all the little farts he had brought with him were so frightened that they all ran away. They presumably thought there was a murderer at the welfare home. But this fright did not last long. and they would most likely return in a moment to complain to Mrs. Linda. When the time comes, Mrs. Linda will stop them to ask for compensation, in the name of hurting the children. Oh my God, Kenny's body is so tall. He suspects that he and Hagrid are not long apart. How can he still be counted as a child? And if Mrs. Linda really talked about the compensation in a moment, would he really have to pay for it? That's his private property. Or he pretended to faint? Darren thought tangledly. The boy's face was full of hesitation and sadness, as if he had lost something important. How can Kenley be so important? Didn't this kid know that Kenley had hurt him so badly? Or is he too kind, good to the point of stupidity? Lily, what should I do with him? If you were here, would you praise him, or would you gently reprimand him and let him take care of himself first? Snape looked at Darren in silence for a long time, before he said in a somewhat hoarse tone, with you. The brain thinks that if he has something now, then I can't still stand here. Wizards who hurt muggles will also be sent to Azkaban. Although he used some methods to disguise the past, the damn fools in the Ministry of Magic really thought Kenley was a 20-something man with giant blood who wanted to attack his psychopath. In about 10 minutes, he should show up. Hey, Darren's eyes lit up. Listening to Snape's tone, Kenley should already be fine. And what didn't he do? Oh, I really deserve to be the most famous double-faced spy in the wizarding world. And I feel that this business is very skilled. I just don't know how Snape got rid of his guilt. Shouldn't he be detained for a while at the Ministry of Magic? From Dumbledore's appearance to this point, Snape was probably gone for more than an hour. When did the Ministry of Magic become so efficient? Darren was curious, but now as a child who doesn't know anything, these things can't be asked. He only needed to know one thing: Kenley was fine, and would appear soon. No need to lose money. Hey, wizarding efficiency is high. As far as the kind of injury that Snape just broke out, put aside the ordinary people's side, wait for the ambulance to come, afraid of death. And in St. Mungo, the treatment was successful, for more than an hour. Sure enough, it was a wizard. That's good, that's good. Darren sighed. He had brushed a lot of good things from Kenley, and without Kenley, he couldn't trigger the temporary task now. Don't know when the system will send temporary tasks? Ding, sensing the host's thoughts, the system will release 3 temporary tasks every day, and the others need to be played by the host itself. Alright, it turned out that this was the case, and he said how the system was not released, and it turned out that only 3 temporary tasks were released every day. Obviously, temporary missions will get more. I don't know what rewards I can swipe out tomorrow. The boy's eyes lit up the moment he heard the news. Seemed very happy. He really didn't have a bit of a haze, and was only happy for Kenley's safety. Snape's fingers clenched, and a trace of nostalgia appeared under his eyes. Lily, sure enough, it was Lily's child. Red hair, green eyes, fair skin, handsome countenance, and Lily-like personality made him unbearable to even inflict his hatred on James Porter. And Lily has 2 children, Darren Porter and Harry Potter. Both made him start to soften his heart, if both stood in front of him. Same red hair, same green eyes, same bravery, same kindness, the same. He felt that he might, uncontrollably, reveal his softness towards his 2 children. Dumbledore said that Voldemort would make a comeback, that he had to be a double agent, that he couldn't be nice to these 2 children, but he couldn't find a reason to be bad for this child. Looking at this face, looking at these turquoise eyes, looking at this red hair and his good and brave qualities, he really couldn't say anything serious to him. And then Harry Potter. They are twins, and they will be exactly the same. Damn, he couldn't see him as James Potter's child at all. This is his Lily's child. Because of the sadness of Lily's departure, even Snape, whose home is very close to Privet Road, has never seen Harry Potter. He thought he could harden his heart without looking. But all of this broke down here in Darrenport. Episode 7. Darren, who didn't know Snape's thoughts, also thought of Harry Potter at this time. The famous protagonist Harry Potter turned out to be his brother, which he really did not expect in 8 lifetimes. At the same time, it is also a bit pitiful for the original owner. Look at Harry Potter. Born, although the parents only accompanied until the age of 1 year and gone. But Lily gave her a blood curse and rebounded to death Voldemort. And as long as Harry Potter believed that Petunia was his home, Voldemort couldn't hurt him. At this birth, the name is also there, and the status is also there. Even though Petunia was not good for him later, she also gave him 3 meals a day, unlike the original owner, who often went hungry for 2 or 3 days. Harry Potter is famous in the wizarding world, and the poor original owner died in this small welfare house. Wow, that's miserable. Darren sighed, then looked up at Snape. I don't know if this person has seen Harry Potter, but many people in later fanfiction have written about him and Harry CP. Heard he had a crush on Harry? Cough, channeling. Professor Snape, I read the letter. I have a brother Harry Potter. Can I meet him? The protagonist He hadn't seen the protagonist yet. You'll meet after school starts. Snape looked hollow and said without emotion. Darren nodded disappointedly. By the way, sigh Snape's dedication, good fellow, always use brain closure. Or is he really special like Lily? So Snape has no way to disguise himself in front of him? Thinking about it, Darren was even more curious about what he looked like now. The original owner was indeed red-haired and green-eyed, but because of injuries and malnutrition, as well as the neglect of the orphanage, it did not look good. Sloppy, yellow-skinned, deep eye sockets. At that time, Darren hated his looks. After that, I raised my body every day, and when I saw food, I tried to get my hands on it. But he hadn't looked in the mirror for a few days, and he didn't know what he had become. Especially after obtaining the Holy Father aura given by the system, I believe that the appearance value will definitely improve, but I don't know what it will be improved. Only at this time, he could not say that he wanted to go back to look in the mirror, and could only stand curiously next to Snape, pacing back and forth with an itch in his heart. If you're idle, you can use your hands that always think of doing stupid things to clean up your things. Snape looked at Darren and said sarcastically, "What's so important about Kenley? Do you have to stand in the doorway and wait? It's better to pack up your things and take a break when you have time. The traces of the broken head and bleeding a few days ago are still there. Is it difficult to think of staying in St. Mungo's or the school hospital a few days before the start of school?" And Dumbledore, who is really old, who has been pasted by sugar, and has talked to a woman who loves money for so long, and forgetting everything cannot solve the problem. He felt that some of the Death Eater's solutions to problems were very good, at least not to waste time. Damn, he came in such a hurry that there was a pot of vomit in the crucible. It should be scrapped now. This damn Dumbledore, why don't you do things faster? Darren certainly didn't know that there was so much mental activity under Snape's empty eyes, and he had heard Snape tell him to pack his things. Ah hey, could it be that Snape discovered his curiosity? Good professor. Darren nodded vigorously and walked cheerfully toward his room, leaving Snape looking at his back silently in remembrance. Lily. Darren's room was clean. Although the original owner is a child who does not like to clean up the room, he is an adult, and occasionally he will clean up on a whim. What's more, there is nothing to clean up in this room. A small bed alone, a small cupboard next to it. There was a shabby set of tables and chairs next to the cabinet. When someone comes to visit, the table will be covered with a tablecloth, and it will look a lot brighter. However, it is not time to visit, so it is still very shabby. Darren didn't care about that. He opened the cabinet and took out a mirror from inside. It was a fragment of a mirror that Mrs. Linda had once broken and given to the children. Darren didn't care, wiped it up, and then put his face on it. He was amazed at this sight. No wonder Snape missed him when he saw him. It is really this face that looks particularly good now, with the cuteness of a child, and with the beauty of imminent maturity. The emerald green eyes were watery, and when they looked at people fixedly, it was as if they were looking at the whole world intently. A bright red hair was soft on the top of his head, and the hair at the corner of his forehead did not know why. It was hard to tilt a strand up, looking a bit like dull hair. The small face is a little pale, and there is a scar on the forehead, and the surrounding area is blue, but it does not look ugly, but it looks painful. The system is awesome. Darren praised the system fiercely. This puts the mirror back in place. He did not intend to take this mirror away and leave it to future generations. Other things are to be taken away, not because he wants to use it later, but to make people pity him. After all, such a miserable child is doing something wrong. Who can bear to blame? Even Snape considered the words he spoke to, and the lines that pierced his heart like Harry's had never appeared. This is the importance of pity. Of course, it is indeed immoral for a brain to throw away all the things of the original master. Plus it is not in line with his current Holy Father design. Darren sighed and took out his other patched outfit from the closet, along with a pair of small panties with a large hole in them, 2 biscuits that are about to mold, and a pencil that had not been used several times, the pen that Mrs. Linda used to get them to write. Although only when someone comes to visit, they will let them use it. Looking at this thing, Darren couldn't help but pity himself. Fortunately, he got the system, otherwise he would have to stay in this welfare home for a while, before he could find a way out. And it's the kind of unsafe way out. Oh, dear child, are you done packing up your things? As Darren turned, Dumbledore's voice appeared behind him at the same time. Episode 8. Professor. I packed up. Darren lifted his dress, still cheerful, pretending not to see the frowns of Snape and Dumbledore frowning at the same time. Didn't expect that? As the youngest son of Lily and James, the brother of the famous Harry Potter, he had only 2 clothes. Darren could probably guess what the 2 men were thinking right now, but he wouldn't comfort the 2 people who made him so miserable now. Severus, I think this kid might need some groceries and a change of clothes. Oh, lovely little Darren, I hope you accept a belated gift from an old man who doesn't know what else he can do to make up for the guilt in his heart. Before Darren could show his fatherly pose, Dumbledore blocked his words. Darren rolled his eyes. He hadn't thought of paying for clothes himself, but he couldn't lack such an opportunity to pretend to be the Holy Father. However, as a father who intends to show himself all the time, Darren has found an alternative perspective. He tilted his head, looked up at Dumbledore, and suddenly said gently, Mr. Dumbledore, Mr. Snape, I think I understand that you feel guilty that you have not found me for so many years, and want to compensate me. I forgive you, really. I think you'll want to hear that. You don't owe me. If you really don't feel overwhelmed, maybe you can find me a place to live, and your heart may be more comfortable. Ding, Father plus 100. Darren was pleased. Having accepted the father value, he already had hundreds of father values, and he didn't know what the father value could do except manipulate silence. Wait until you have nothing to look at again. It's still dealing with Dumbledore and Snape. He had a hunch that he might also reap a wave of fatherhood. The boy's eyes were filled with comfort, and he did not say these words against his will. He sincerely wanted them to feel more comfortable and even willing to accept their compensation. But these made Dumbledore and Snape even more mixed. Obviously they should have comforted this child, but in turn, they were comforted by this child. Obviously James and Lily are guarding the wizarding world, and their children should live a life of not being rich, but at least a normal child's life. But Darren didn't even have a patch of clothing. He was often beaten, did not have enough to eat, and was bullied. This is all their dereliction of duty. And the child was worried that they were upset, and in turn comforted him. This child and Voldemort are really two opposite extremes. Dumbledore took off his glasses and wiped his eyes, sighing and saying, "Child, I hope you will accept our compensation as an old man's most sincere request. As for where to live, for the time being you need to live at Hogwarts, and I think Harry will need some time to adjust to your presence. Well, I have no opinion with Professor Dumbledore, and if Professor Snape thinks the same way, I will accept your gift. Although I think I have taken advantage, if this makes you feel better." Ding, father plus 50. Darren was a little sorry, this time not 100, and back to 50. However, it can be exchanged for a few words, but it does not suffer losses. But Dumbledore didn't believe what Harry had said to adapt to his existence. Dumbledore must have been afraid that he might have hidden problems. After all, the old man was suspicious. And it also needs to be explained to Petunia. Thinking about the personalities of Petunia and Vernon, Darren can't help but feel a headache for Dumbledore. As Darren smiled, so did Dumbledore. He smiled and said, "Severus should be willing to buy you a gift. He is not good at words, so you just have to accept it with peace of mind." Dumbledore finished speaking, and Darren glanced at Snape at the same time. Snape kept an empty look in his eyes the whole time, only when Darren looked over and let out a snort from his nose. If it weren't for Darren's good hearing, he would have thought he was humming. "Well, if you're done, it's time to get out of here. By the way, your friend who may have troll blood is there." Snape intensified his tone when he spoke of his friend, then lifted his chin, the tip of his greasy nose pointing in one direction. Darren looked in the direction and saw that Kenley was following a few children, and the probe was looking at this side. Looking at their expressions, it should be all forgotten about the previous things. Thinking of Snape's tone of voice in which he read Avada, one of them gave them a look of forgetfulness, and Darren couldn't help but mourn for these people for a second. But he immediately became a little sad. He was going to leave here, and he was still thinking of continuing to brush up on the rewards of Kenley in the welfare home, who knew that things were uncertain. "Go, say goodbye to them, kids," Dumbledore said gently. Darren shook his head and sighed softly. "No, when something like that happens, they should be very scared of me, or don't go. The province scares them." As a person who doesn't know the magic of forgetting everything, he surely won't know that these people have forgotten what just happened. So it's normal to worry that they are afraid of themselves. Ding, father plus 50. Putting away the father's value again, Darren also completely withdrew the gaze that looked at Kenley. He can also be regarded as avenging the original owner, and he should not have contact with it again in the days to come. And with Darren's words, Snape had no idea to explain to him, and he couldn't wait to hold on to his shoulder and coldly say, "Hold on to me," and disappeared in place. He was tired of this man named Kenley. Tired of this stupid boy always forgiving such a scumbag. After hearing Darren say that he was gone, he even let out a sigh of relief. Finally, I don't need to hear the name Kenley anymore. Episode 9. Before Darren could react, he felt like the sky was spinning, and the whole person seemed to be squeezed out of a water pipe. "Good boy, eat a chocolate and you'll be much more comfortable." As Darren stood firm, Dumbledore's old voice came and handed over a large piece of chocolate. Darren took it curiously. "I've heard that chocolate in the wizarding world is different. It is said to lift the spirits, relieve fear and fatigue, and so on." When Harry was frightened by the Dementors, he was stuffed by Lupin. He took a tentative bite. A warm current appeared in his body. "Magic is magical." Darren couldn't help but sigh. Dumbledore nodded accordingly. "Magic is a magical thing. Fluorescent. Severus, why did you make your home so dark?" Dumbledore asked helplessly. Snape skimmed his lips and said sarcastically, "Albus, if your brain is not stuffed with mustard, then you should know that I haven't been home in a long time." He would rather live in Hogwarts than here. It symbolizes his painful childhood, but also symbolizes Lily. Snape's eyes were even more hollow. Darren ignored it, and he was curiously looking at the layout of Snape's house. It is a 2-bedroom and 1-room room, and the curtains of the room are all tightly drawn, which looks very dark. There was a huge fireplace in the living room, and the surrounding area was empty, and it was obvious that Snape had emptied his house. Even if the thief comes, he has to cry and leave. "The flames are raging." Dumbledore pointed to the fireplace, and the fireplace lit up at once. He expertly took out a large jar from the fireplace and opened it, and from it took out a small handful of shiny powder and handed it to Darren. "It's the Phalu powder, throw it in the stove, say Hogwarts, and just step in." Snape looked at Darren, touched it from the inside, threw it into the fireplace, read Hogwarts, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Darren blinked, and said that this Snape was really a knife-mouthed tofu heart, and knew that he was worried that he would not use Phalu powder, so he would give him a demonstration first. Darren smiled shyly at Dumbledore's encouraging gaze, then threw down the fluffy powder and stepped into the fireplace. In a dazzling moment, Darren appears in a wide office. Snape turned around expressionlessly, and when he arrived, quickly raised his robe and left. Only a witch with a pointed hat and an extremely serious look was sitting in an office chair writing something. Seeing him step out of the inside, he quickly stood up, his eyes were amazed, and his lips trembled a little. "Darren. Really child, Dumbledore sent a message saying you found it." I'm so glad that soon your brothers will be reunited. The witch did not look over, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and said in a serious tone as much as possible, "Child, Lily would be very happy to know that you have grown so big." Well, Minerva, Lily would certainly be very pleased. Her 2 children are grown up, and Darren hasn't been lost in the great adventure. But I still have some questions that I need to talk to Darren about. Dumbledore stepped out of the fireplace and said solemnly as he slapped the ashes on his body, "No, Albus, didn't you see the wound on the door of this child's head? All he needs is treatment as well as bed rest." Professor Mireva McGonagall frowned and said with a serious face filled with the anger of a lioness. Dumbledore laughed softly. "It all has to wait a while, maybe 10 minutes, and Mr. Darren and I have a little whisper to say," he said insistently. Professor McGonagall could only compromise, pursed his lips and insisted, 10 minutes, I will look at the watch." "No problem, Darren, come with me." Dumbledore led Darren to his office. They came to a pair of ugly gargoyles. Password, chilled lemon juice. "Well, you're always right." The gargoyle gave way, and the wall behind him split in half, revealing a staircase. Darren hurriedly followed Dumbledore up. Again, this is a stunning scene from the original book. Portraits of past principals are displayed here. There are also many silverware, making a clanging sound. Tweet tweet. Darren also heard a burst of bird calls. Looking back, an ugly, hairless little turkey was standing on a bird rack and screaming at his name. "Fox is a phoenix. The other day was injured. I simply let it nirvana. Wait until it is feathered, then you can see its beauty." Dumbledore thought Darren didn't understand and explained with a smile. Darren showed a look of amazement, wondering if his phoenix egg could be better than Fox. Although the phoenix described in the original book is very good looking, but all Darren saw was a hairless turkey. It's ugly. However, for the sake of human design, he still asked worriedly, then can it still be good? Who hurt it so cruelly? Ding, father plus 20, how to give less? Darren scratched his hair in confusion and heard Dumbledore's indifferent reply. It was an accident, Darren, an accident that no one expected. Well, it should be beautiful in the future, Darren said politely. Fox tilted his head to look at Darren. I don't know why. It feels that Darren is very fond of the phoenix, if it does not already have an owner, otherwise it will definitely find a way to become Darren's phoenix. Dumbledore looked at Darren in amazement. Fox liked Darren so much. Could it be that Darren had the same blood as him, a phoenix? Dumbledore wondered if the Potter family had a phoenix bloodline. The specific bloodline is the secret of the Potter family, but it seems that I heard that the first generation of Mrs. Potter has a phoenix bloodline. Could it be that this child has been inherited? Episode 10. Do you want to study Darren's bloodline carefully? Dumbledore thought curiously. However, he still suppressed this idea, and the bloodline of each family was not something that outsiders could explore. Even if Darren was still a small child and very kind, if he proposed that he would not refuse him, then he would not want to do such a thing. He now needed to find out if Lily's bloodline spell had fallen on Darren. Lily's spell is to protect all the family members she recognizes. Logically, Darren should have. But when he had followed the lines of this spell, there was no trace of Darren, so he would think that Darren was dead. Now that Darren was clearly alive, he wondered what was going on with Darren. Could it be that Lily thought Darren was dead, so the blood curse didn't fall on him? There is that possibility, but unlikely. Dumbledore cast a few spells on Darren, and his face gradually turned ugly, but he was afraid of scaring Darren, so he forced out a smile. Silently, Darren is a silent person. How can this be? No wonder Lily's blood curse didn't fall on Darren, perhaps silently counteracted. Both are dark spells, and it's normal to cancel them off at the same time. Although Dumbledore did not see the scene, he thought it was only possible. As we all know, the silent person does not live to be 10 years old, so Dumbledore never thought that Darren would be a silent man. But now that the facts were in sight, Dumbledore couldn't admit it or not, but he had never seen a silent scene in Darren's memory. Darren, have you ever found that the body has an extra force, very strong, very evil? Dumbledore asked solemnly. Darren was stunned before he reacted that what he said should be silence. All right, it added a fire to his tragic childhood. Yes, Professor Dumbledore, when I was a child I always felt that there would be some strange power in my body, and I was afraid to use it, and then it disappeared. By the way, it may still be hidden in my body, but it seems like I've never seen it come out in all these years, but I feel that it should be kind and never hurt others, so I haven't worried about it either, Darren said in a tone of simple innocence. Said Dumbledore stunned. The magic became silent and he understood, but he really couldn't understand the silent kindness. But he probably understood what Darren meant. Are you saying that silence, the power lurking in your body, has never appeared, and you subconsciously feel that it is not harmful to you? Dumbledore concluded. Darren nodded vigorously. Although he also knew that this was a bit ridiculous, he could not say that he was silently sent by the system, and 1,000 holy fathers were worth 1 minute. It can only be fooled like this. But there is a lot of idealism in the wizarding world, and Dumbledore should be understandable, right? Dumbledore was silent. Although the use of magic by wizards is also idealistic, a strong will can be used with action, but silence is the point of kindness and control. He really can't be idealistic. But if it were not for the fact that Darren's silence was a dark force, it would not be quite right. After all, Darren has not used silence until now, nor has he used silence to hurt people, which is completely different from other silent people. As we all know, the Silent Ones were before the Muggles hunted wizards, a powerful force that appears when wizards try to suppress their magic in order to hide their identity from persecution. But wizards can't control them over time, and they will be silently controlled. Silence is an unstable, uncontrollable dark force that will suddenly attack and then disappear. And now most of them appear because the little wizard does not understand, resulting in extreme disgust for his own magic. If the silent person does not use magic, he will be eaten back. The use of magic is uncontrollable and causes great damage to the body. Therefore, the silent will die early. So Darren, this silence is very unmagical, and it was strange to appear. It is reasonable to say that the little wizard must be particularly disgusted with his magic before he can appear. Darren was just a little afraid of his magic, and then silently appeared. Then he didn't force Darren to use magic, as if he had absorbed all the magic in his body. Hidden in the deepest part of Darren's body, Darren spent 11 years of quiet like a squib. Wait a minute, like a squib? No wonder Darren's name doesn't appear on the Book of Access. Maybe it's because of this silence? So what was the reason why Darren's name appeared on the Book of Access? Professor Dumbledore, I seem to have used this power before you came to pick me up today. Darren followed Dumbledore's train of thought and quickly began to whitewash his suspicions. Well, get the system to send magic, such a thing certainly cannot say, then push everything to silence. Oh? Tell me more about it. That's right. Kenley was trying to get me into trouble with people at that time, so Dumbledore picked up his spirits. Does this kid want to rebel against Kenley? It seems that this child is not too stupid. Darren didn't know what he was thinking, and he continued, so I was going to run a little farther. So I used a little bit and then really ran a little faster. Dumbledore, White is happy. This stupid kid used silence and actually wanted to run faster. Silently and obediently, I ran a little faster. Well, a little? Is it really not a billion points, but a point? Is silence so controllable? I give you the simplest spell, Yuga Dim Leviosa, which can make items float. Dumbledore taught Darren twice, then handed him his wand. Darren carefully picked it up and felt a powerful energy appear in his body. Old wand. Darren's first reaction to getting the old wand was not that he was stronger, but that Dumbledore, the old silver coin, was testing him. He pretended to be such a holy father, and he still didn't let him go. Episode 11. But no way. People were under the eaves and had to bow their heads. Who made the original Lord? And Voldemort, like Voldemort, grew up in the orphanage, also abused by the dean and bullied by other children. The difference is that Voldemort has magic to resist, and the original owner is Squib. But he reacted immediately, and Dumbledore should not have been tempted, or that it did not mean this before handing him the wand. After all, he didn't have a wand now, and Dumbledore only had this old wand. You got him, Leviosa. Darren whispered at a piece of silverware on Dumbledore's desk. He felt a surge of energy pouring out of his body along the wand, and the silverware floated gently with his thoughts. Thinking high and thinking low is entirely up to his own ideas. With the wand in his hand, he was like a god. Perfect. If it's in class, I'll definitely add 20 points for you. Dumbledore laughed and applauded, taking the wand that Darren sent back without hesitation. The smile on his face was more real. That's nice. The child, as he had shown, was not obsessed with power or feared it. But if that's the case, then what is going on silently? Could it be that Lily was the result of the experimental drugs she used to get pregnant? Lily was tortured by Death Eaters in the first place. Later, in order to save Lily, Snape also used a lot of potions and spells, causing Lily to become a single twin. At that time, they were worried about the problem, and they didn't know who the extra child was or what the situation was. Now it seems that the extra child should be Darren. The effect is that Darren becomes a controllable silencer. Maybe that's a good thing? When Darren used his magic, Dumbledore did not feel the evil dark force of silence, but felt an orderly, cautious force. This may be Darren's silence. It is also the power of goodness in Darren's mouth. Child, I can't draw conclusions about you. Then I can only trust your intuition. It's a controlled silence. So congratulations to your child. You may well have been blessed with misfortune and gained the controllable power that one of my best friends has been pursuing all his life. Dumbledore said with a sigh. The blue eyes showed a hint of sadness. Darren guessed that this friend should be Dumbledore's friend Grindelwald. I heard that these two people are still lovers? Tut. Isn't it good to have a fragrant and soft girl? Spitting on Dumbledore's view of love, Darren laughed shyly again. I've known it since I was a child. It never made me feel evil. It only made me feel warm, and I believe that when I am in danger, it will definitely come out to protect me. The boy laughed softly. The calm gesture calmed Dumbledore, who was still a little worried. Dumbledore was dumbfounded. Leongio smiled and said, Okay boy, if that's the case, then I should send you to the school hospital. I think Maliva and Miss Pomfrey are in a hurry. Oh yes, Miss Pomfrey is the doctor at the school hospital, and we need to look at your wounds. And I know from Mrs. Linda that you almost died. Dumbledore's tone grew serious. He really didn't expect Darren to live such a life. He even almost died before they could find it. At the thought of such a kind and lovely child, who had lost his life and left them in obscurity, even Dumbledore, who was already accustomed to life and death, couldn't help but feel heavy in his heart. Professor, there should be no big deal. Kenley didn't mean to. Well, I'll just let you go. Ding, father plus 20. Darren made a kind and generous appearance, and seeing Dumbledore's disapproving eyes, he changed his mouth in embarrassment. It was when he accepted the father's value with a puzzled face. Why is it still so little? Is it because there is only one Dumbledore here? Forget it, after the study. Darren shook his head and smiled at Dumbledore's somewhat serious countenance. Well, I believe that the child, named Kenley, may be subjected to little retaliation from Dumbledore. Well, he still can't forgive that guy. Taken to the infirmary by Dumbledore, Darren was greeted by a kind lady's embrace. Oh my god, this is Darren, he's so cute, just. Who bandaged your wounds? Too rough. Incredible, muggles really are. Suppurated, the lady anxiously put Darren on the hospital bed, pushed him down, and kept drinking low in her mouth, so that Dumbledore next to her lowered his voice a lot. Bobby, this child's wound. Albus, this child's wound is cracked. Didn't you and Severus notice his condition? And he needs to get a good rest, but also a lot of nutrients. He is very weak now. Madame Pomfrey shouted loudly. Dumbledore glanced apologetically at Darren. Neither he nor Severus could think of Darren's wounds. Sorry, it was me and Severus who were careless. Dumbledore apologized again. No, only you didn't think of that. Snape's cold whizzing voice came. Then he took out several bottles of the potion and delivered them all to Madame Pomfrey. You've gone to make potions? Dumbledore asked in surprise. He really hadn't thought that Snape would be willing to boil a potion for Darren. After all, Darren's injuries weren't a big problem in the wizarding world, and Madame Pomfrey was enough. As a result, Snape also came back to make a potion and sent it. A great potion that replenishes nutrients and speeds up wound recovery. Severus, you even added moonlight grass. Madame Pomfrey exclaimed. Snape avoided his gaze and said with a straight face, I just have a little left to make the potion, and I don't want to waste it before adding it. I know. Madame Pomfrey laughed secretly and unscrewed the lid of the potion and handed it to Darren. Episode 12. Darren took the potion that Madame Pomfrey had handed over, poked his head and sniffed it, and tasted it tentatively. It is not as bitter as the original book says, but it has a mellow taste. He lifted his head and drank it all in one gulp. Listening to Pomfrey's tone, there is moonlight herb added to it. Maybe it is a very valuable medicinal material? Don't drink white, don't drink. Well, this kid just drank his medicine and needs to rest. It's time for you to leave. Madame Pomfrey waved her hands and threw Dumbledore and Snape out of the infirmary. Darren just wanted to sneak a laugh when sleepiness came up, and he yawned and fell into a deep sleep. When Darren woke up again, the sun was shining outside the window. On the table were a dozen bags of candy, 2 sets of black wizarding clothes, and 2 sets of muggle casual clothes. The clothes should have been bought by Snape. There were also a dozen greeting cards next to the clothes. Darren picked it up doubtfully, and it turned out that it was all sent by the professor at Hogwarts. One of the pieces reads Corina's Churl. Darren stared at the name for a moment, and expressed a moment of silence to the poor professor in advance. This professor should be dead this year without a problem. Darren laughed sadly out loud. Seeing that he was awake, Madame Pomfrey smiled hastily and came over to examine his body, and said with a sigh of relief, yes, the wound is completely healed, some of the missing nutrients have been replenished, and Severus's effect is very good. Darren blinked his eyes twice, and he did feel particularly comfortable, not sleeping so soundly in a long time. Madam, how long have I slept? It shouldn't be long, right? 3 days, my child, you've slept all 3 days. If Severus and I hadn't checked a few times and made sure you didn't have anything to do but were too sleepy, I'm afraid you'd have been sent to St. Mungo's by his insistence, Madame Pomfrey said with a smile. Darren's eyes widened in confusion. 3 days? He missed 9 temporary missions. How did he sleep for 3 days? It should not be Tusnep's medicine good, just drink it in one gulp. No, he just doesn't want anything, he has to drink. So does this count as a work injury? Does this system make up for the task? Apparently not. The system didn't even heed his unreasonable teasing. Darren felt his sad breathing stop. Okay boy, you can be discharged from the hospital. I hope you don't get as skinny as those Gryffindor classmates. Always get yourself into the school doctor's office. Gryffindor? Darren looked dazed. At this point, he should have not known what Gryffindor was. Well, boy, I forgot you came from a muggle. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin are the 4 houses at Hogwarts. The school will give you a branch when school starts, but it will give you a little secret. When you are in the academy, as long as you meet the requirements, you can take the initiative to propose what college you want to go to. For example, Slytherin demanded pure blood, Gryffindor demanded courage, Ravenclaw demanded studiousness, and Hufflepuff demanded integrity. If you have the qualities required by the academy, the branch will judge your subjectivity. I think I was just going to pursue a Slytherin senior and took the initiative to enter Slytherin. Oh well. Before Darren could ask, Madame Pomfrey had already spoken out about the sorting in a huff. He also thought that the matter of choosing the academy was very secretive, and it seemed that there were many people who knew about it. Oh yes, ma'am, which professor will the school send to our branch? Darren asked again ignorantly. This time Madame Pomfrey did not tell him, and smiled mysteriously, saying with a little schadenfreude, child, life has to be a little unknown to be interesting. When I was in school, I heard my brother say that I had to fight with the trolls. She hummed the song and left, leaving Darren crying and laughing. The wizarding world is pretty funny for kids. If he really didn't know anything, a muggle-born child, he was afraid that he was already panicked at this time. Fight trolls. This is the business of the protagonist, and there is a wool relationship with his holy father? Darren spat and pulled the wizard's robe over the table and put it on his body, fat and thin just right. Darren couldn't imagine Snape gloomily picking out clothes for him. Dressed, holding a pile of greeting cards and candy bags, Darren walked out of the school doctor's office and looked out blankly. This time it was really dazed. Although he had seen Harry Potter, he also carefully memorized the school map in the novel. Where should he go now? Mr. Darren. Syllable. Big ears, big surprisingly large eyes. Elves about the same height as Darren appeared in front of Darren. House elves. Mr. Darren, I am Page, the house elf of Hogwarts, and Mr. Dumbledore asked me to take care of you. Darren looked at the house elf named Paggy without a trace. The most described house elf in the original book is Dobby, a free house elf. When in Malfoy's house, he likes to punish himself for not saying a word, and the nerve-looking house elves are in the house. And Paggy wasn't like that. She seemed well-educated, looking at Darren meekly with an inclusive smile on her face. Hi Paggy, my name is Darren Porter. Just call me Darren. I want to know where I live before school starts. My stuff needs to be put on hold, Darren said well-behavedly. The smile on Paige's face deepened, and it took Darren's hand and said cheerfully, Okay Darren, your residence is temporarily settled in your Gryffindor dormitory, and Professor McGonagall agrees that you will stay here before school starts. P.S. Seeing that everyone in the comments section is worried about entering Slytherin, the protagonist may be suspected. In fact, don't worry, as long as everyone votes out the results, we can add the plot. For example, the reason for going to Gryffindor was to want to be with Harry. Why go to Hufflepuff for food? Too kind in heart. The reason for going to Ravenclaw is the yearning for knowledge. The reason for going to Slytherin may be because the first contact was Professor Snape, so he wanted to enter his house. So everyone is assured of bold elections, and in the end the author will choose the college with the largest number of voters. By the way, let's vote in the voting area. Now 2 votes for Slytherin, 2 votes for Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff and no one yet. Episode 13. Darren nodded, knowing that Dumbledore might want him into Gryffindor house. A generation of Gryffindor families, plus the protagonist will also come here, so it is necessary for him to get in touch with it in advance. If he does end up in Gryffindor, chances are that even his bed won't change. It didn't matter which academy Darren was assigned to, he could be a holy father in any college, even Slytherin. Darren didn't care and just followed Paige forward. Follow Paige all the way to the top of the Gryffindor tower. There is a portrait of the fat lady here. Password, worthless. So are you. Professor McGonagall has already told me that you are a new student and I hope you don't disturb my sleep by swimming in the middle of the night, the fat lady said with a headache. Gryffindor kids always have a lot of energy, especially those 2 twins. They are almost every day at night. I really don't know how she has come all these years. Okay, I'm not going to run around. Darren nodded obediently. How is it possible to bow your head and skim your lips and come to Hogwarts for a nightless tour? Isn't night tours a feature of Hogwarts? However, he has just arrived now, and he does not have an invisibility cloak and will not be a phantom spell, and running around will affect the image. Ah, such a well-behaved child. I wish I had been given a Gryffindor, the fat lady said with infinite emotion, and then opened the door of the lounge. It is a place full of red and gold. There were some sofas and tables. There was a warm fire burning in the fireplace. The lounge windows were crackled by the wind. It was both warm and cozy. There is a staircase at each end of the lounge, leading to boys on one side and girls on the other. Paggy led Darren down one of the stairs. Then he pushed open the door of the first bedroom. Still in a reddish gold layout, the 4-cornered pillar bed was large and a thick scarlet blanket was wrapped around the pillar. Darren chooses a bed and puts everything on the bed, after which the house elves will help him tidy up. Thank you, Paige. I wonder if Professor Dumbledore has told you what I need to do next, Darren asked hurriedly. It had been 3 days since he woke up, 9 temporary missions had passed, and he was now in a hurry to trigger the mission. He didn't want to lose today's task as well. Yes, Mr. Dumbledore said, you might be able to go to Diagon Alley and buy something. You'll need a wand, a book, 3 days before school starts, and a lot more to prepare. Of course, apart from the wand, you can tell me to buy it, Paige said cheerfully, her tone full of respect and enthusiasm, and some look at the kindness of the youngsters. Intuitively, Darren felt that the house elf might not be ordinary, so he smiled and said as if embarrassed, Thank you Professor Dumbledore and Paige for your reminder. Otherwise I really don't know what to do, though I came to this magical world for the first time. But I feel like there are good people here, and everyone makes me feel incredibly happy. When Darren finished, Paige's smile grew even bigger. He seemed to be able to hear the sound of +1, +1, +1 of goodwill. Dumbledore and the other professors also liked you very much, Paige exclaimed. After thinking about it again, he said hesitantly, I wonder if Mr. Darren, have you ever tried phantom shapeshifting? I think it's quicker to take you to Diagon Alley like this. Of course, thank you, Paige. You are the most polite child I have ever met. Paige's eyes are gentle. Taking Darren's hand, he came to a lively street in an instant. Crucible, Crucible, the latest Crucible, the Lightwell series broom, your good helper for flying. New pets can be brought to Hogwarts. Mom, I want a quill pen. The streets were extremely lively, and Darren was amazed at the scene around him. Not to mention, the wizard's thing is to look magical. How did muggles get here? It's obscure. If you say this in the Muggle world, you may be caught by Muggles as guinea pigs. Just as Darren was sighing, he heard two voices suddenly ringing out. He looked back and saw that it was a wizard and an ordinary man who were fighting each other. Look at the wizard, a torn robe, an extremely worn wizard's hat, and an umbrella used as a cane in his hand, like some fallen nobleman. Darren didn't care. Things like this kind of mouth-wringing are generally not easy to fight. It is that the fallen nobles are jealous of ordinary people who dress better than him, and they are just jealous. Judging by his experience in the previous life, he may not be able to quarrel. Ding, the system found that there is room for the father's behavior, and now releases a temporary task, blocking the ordinary man, facing the fallen wizard, and saying in a condemning tone, "This gentleman, I don't allow you to bully ordinary people. What dissatisfaction you have can vent at me, even if it is an ordinary person. It is not a existence that you can bully casually." Ding, after the mission is completed, yet the title will not lose the wand. After wearing the aura, your wand will never be lost. Do you accept the task? Pick up. Although I feel that this title is worse than those of the Phoenix Pet Beast Egg, it is also a reward, and it's about talking, doing things that do actions. Darren took a deep breath. Just now, I looked at the lively face, and instantly became angry. He took 3 or 2 steps in front of ordinary people, encouraged himself, and said in a frightened, but upright condemning tone, "This gentleman, how can you bully ordinary people? What happened to Muggles? Muggles are also people, and I don't believe that, sir. You didn't have a Muggle in your ancestors. What dissatisfaction do you have to vent against me? I just want to tell you that even ordinary people are not a being that you can bully at will." Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining the title and not losing the wand. As the mechanical sound of the system fell, not far from the ordinary man, a little girl with disheveled hair looked at Darren's eyes gradually gentle. "Oh my god, is there such a kind little wizard in the wizarding world?" Episode 14. Hermione's perception of the wizarding world was not very good. Along the way, they had been sneered at by several wizards. At the Cauldron Bar, another wizard pulled out his wand at them, but fortunately the other wizards there were fine, and together they subdued the wizard. But Hermione's impression of the wizarding world plummeted. At the same time, she also began to have some inferiority complex with her Muggle origin. Although it was only a little, this little girl who had been confident in the Muggle world since she was a child did have a lot of worries. Was she worried that she could really get into Hogwarts? I heard that all the people there are wizards. Would they have pulled out their wands and given her a spell or struck her on the head with a wand as soon as they heard she was a little Muggle-born? And she was also worried about her father, Mr. Granger. Mr. Granger had apparently accepted more malice in the wizarding world than she did. He was angry at what had happened to him in the wizarding world. For the sake of his precious daughter, he endured all the way. But just now, a stinky man who pretended to be an aristocrat taunted him, and he finally couldn't control his temper and objected. How dare anyone taunt him twice? As a dentist with a high status in the outside world, Mr. Granger could not stand this grievance. These arrogant wizards. If Hermione hadn't needed to come here to school, he wouldn't even have set foot in this filthy place. But when he finished, he also had a moment of regret. The methods of these wizards were strange, and he had just seen a wizard with a toad-like lump on his face. Wouldn't this wizard have made him like that too? Just when he was in a very bad mood, a small figure stood in front of him. "Something is coming at me. Even ordinary people are not the existence of your casual bullying." Oh, my god. It was still a child, as if it were a child as old as Hermione. How could he be so brave? "Hermione, this is probably your future classmate. Is this how your classmates are all righteous?" Mr. Granger asked in amazement. Hermione shook her head. How come? Even the school where she grew up had good kids and bad kids. How could everyone at Hogwarts be like that? Although she didn't know Darren, she thought that there might not be so many righteous people like this. After all, Darren didn't even have a wand when he stood in their way. He was a freshman. Obviously, he was also afraid, but he did not back down in the slightest. In the next 7 years, she may be able to become a classmate with such a person, and Hermione's anxiety about the future seems to be much less. Hermione and Mr. Granger thought. Darren certainly didn't know. At this time, he had just received the title of wand that would not be lost, and he had finished wearing it for himself. Although he felt that this reward was not good, it was also something he had worked so hard to wait to refresh. It still needs to be cherished. His expression was indifferent, but he didn't know that the Muntingas on the other side had a dog in his heart. He just casually laughed at a Muggle on the way, and the Muggle actually taunted him. And just as he was about to rest in peace and turn away, the little cub in front of him stood in front of him, saying that ordinary people were not the existence of his bullying. Shit. Where did Dumbledore find the cubs? How can you be so nosy? Even if he had planned to calm things down before, he was now a little reluctant. He Muntingas doesn't want to fall into the reputation of being scared away by first-year students. "Little cub, do you know who I am?" Muntingas said in a somber tone. Darren shook his head. "Don't know." He really doesn't know. He came to be the father. "There is a tradition in our family that the heads of disobedient children are chopped off and used as ornaments for murals." Muntingas looked at Darren grimly, looking terrified. Oh murderer. Both Hermione and Mr. Granger were frightened by him. Mr. Granger knew nothing about the wizarding world, and only had a little communication with Professor McGonagall, who had come to their house earlier and informed Hermione that she was going to school. "I learned that more than 10 years ago, a great war broke out in the wizarding world, and a group of murderers killed people when they saw them." He had not wanted Hermione to come to the school, but the serious lady had assured him that with Dumbledore's presence at Hogwarts, no one would dare to be reckless. And if Hermione doesn't go to the Magic Academy and learn to apply her magic, she's likely to get out of control as she gets older. That's why Mr. Granger decided to send Hermione here, but now he was really scared. How can there be such a person in the wizarding world? Kill small children and hang their heads on frescoes. Although it sounded like a scare to a child, in combination with Professor McGonagall's words, Mr. Granger was convinced of it. This wizard could be a murderer. Oh, my God. This wizarding world is so horrible that he can't let his children go to school here. He's leaving. He's leaving. It's better to get out of control than to be killed. Hermione was equally frightened. In her opinion, the wizard in front of her was ostensibly threatening Darren, but in fact the wizard was threatening them. After all, it was Dad who offended this person first. Darren just couldn't look past helping them. But what should they do? Do you apologize to this murderer? Will he forgive them? Why didn't the prisons of the wizarding world arrest them all? Ding, sensing the room for the Holy Father system to play, now announces the temporary task, pales and steps forward, and says in a trembling and frightened tone, "Sir, if you kill me, don't kill them, okay? I am willing to die for them." Ding, after the mission is completed, get the reward for the stealing ability of Montingus. Will the host receive the task? This? What is he going to do with the ability to steal? And the man in front of you is Montingus, the thief in the original? Episode 15. Darren looked carefully at the Montingers in front of him. The beard is pulled and somewhat stocky. Luo circled his legs, and his hair was long and messy. When he looked down at Darren, a pair of swollen and bloodshot eyes looked particularly terrifying. As I got closer, I could still smell the strong stench of tobacco and alcohol mixing on his body. Before, Darren only thought that he was dressed in shabby clothes and held an umbrella as a walking stick, which resembled a fallen nobleman. As a result, now that you look at it, this is probably stealing someone's umbrella, right? In the original book, although this guy was loyal to Dumbledore and helped Harry several times, his character was too poor, stealing Sirius's relics and indirectly killing Moody. Mrs. Weasley, who had always had a good temper, was tired of him. Mrs. Veege had been complaining, how could Dumbledore not have taken his life? Darren really didn't expect to come out and be a holy father and meet this guy, and this guy even scared him? Laughed to death. Brother, you are afraid you don't know. The last Kenley who made a big fuss about him has gone to St. Mungo's for a walk. If you let Snape know that you are bullying the son of his goddess, you are afraid that you will be miserable. Pick up. Although Montangus' theft ability should not be used by Darren, it is also ability in the end. Darren closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were filled with the strength of seeing death as if he were homecoming. He took a big step forward in the face of the threat from Montingers. Only the clenched fist showed the fear in his heart. But even so, Darren still opened his mouth, his lips trembling a little, and there was some fear in his eyes. He took a breath, tried to keep his tone as calm as possible, and said, "Sir, if you insist, then if you kill me, don't kill them, okay? I am willing to die for them. If there really is such a fierce bad person as you, then I don't regret breaking into here. It's just a little sorry that I haven't met my brother Harry Potter yet, and I miss him so much." Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the mission and gaining the theft ability of Montingus. Darren read softly and accepted his reward by the way. It seems that this ability feels very good. Montungus's theft ability, within 3 meters of a person, there is a 50% chance that he can randomly get an item on the other person's body. If he had been around Dumbledore for a long time, would he have been able to get the old wand one day? Well, this shouldn't work. Dumbledore will find out and beat him to death. Darren sighed regretfully. The sound is not loud, low, and inaudible, but it makes people's hearts tremble. Let the people who heard him sigh look angrily at Montingers in a trance. How can there be such a person in this world? He didn't even spare a child. This is still Harry Potter's brother. Wait, Harry Potter? Is this kid Harry Potter's younger brother? Harry Potter has a younger brother? The people around them blinked blankly, but immediately turned back to God. Now is not the time to say this. Now they want to teach this damn wizard a lesson. He didn't even spare the cubs, it was too much. The wizard must be a Death Eater, and he should be sent to Azkaban for the Dementors to kiss them. Darren had no idea that he had made a big deal out of it. Montingas was really scaring the child just now. He just wanted to scare the cub in front of him into crying and show his deterrent power. However, how did all the wizards around him look at him with murderous intent? He had no idea that he was provoking the wrath of the people. Hermione took everyone as the background and looked at Darren with pity. Why is there such a great man in the wizarding world as the boy in front of you? She felt that Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard in the wizarding world, was not as great as the boy in front of her. He hadn't seen his brother yet, and he was going to die here. He was not a student at Hogwarts, so he was involved in such things. What she admired most was that he had not flinched until now. Still in front of them, that weak body was even taller than a giant. "Sir, before you want to bully Mr. Darren, I think you might need some beatings." Just when Hermione and Mr. Granger are upset about Darren, the surrounding people are gearing up to send Montingus to Azkaban. A voice rang out coldly. Before Darren could continue to show his father's light, he saw that the Montingers in front of him was firmly bound by rope, and then a fist was imprinted on the eye socket of Montingus. Printed a panda eye on him. And that's not all. After seeing Montingus being tied up, those who were just ready to do it. At this time you punched me and kicked Montangas. Others pulled out their wands and rubbed them secretly, intending to make Montangas suffer a big loss. Don't fight, I was wrong. I was joking with this little cub. I'm not a Death Eater, I've never killed anyone. Shit, who poked me in the ass with a wand? I'm Montangas, help. I have done meritorious service to Dumbledore, and I want to see Dumbledore. If I'm at fault, please let the Ministry of Magic punish me, instead of sending you guys to torture me. Hit me on the head again. I pulled out my wand. Montangas' screams went on for a long time. When Darren saw him again, even if he had always felt that Montangas was not a good thing, he couldn't bear to look directly away and removed his eyes. Miserable. It's miserable. This guy was definitely declared a personal vendetta. Everything on his body was robbed, his face was smashed and his nose was swollen, and he had an abscess the size of a black-backed dog on his leg, and he didn't know which kind person did it. Darren was amazed. He suspected that after a while Montangas would have to be sent to Dumbledore. He would have to be packed. This brother is afraid of doubting life, right?